I'm Tommy Wetjen, and I am the general manager of the Mobile Flea Market.
Awesome, man. Well, you've been on the podcast before, but one of the things that I was excited about was that I think probably about a month or so ago, I listened to a podcast called My First Million. And the founders of that started The Hustle and one other newsletter I can't remember off the top of my head, and they were bought by HubSpot. And you and I haven't spoken about this, so you don't know this, right? Still doesn't know this if you're listening to this or watching it. Like, he's kind of like, what? Huh? So I was listening to this podcast, and actually this will be good news for you, because these guys are basically, they basically look at businesses across the United States or around the globe and try to identify like different spots where things are going to change, that somebody's got a new vision for something, right? And I was being teased by a good friend of mine, Rick Perry, because I had not been to I've lived here since 2004, so I've been here for 20 plus years, but I've not been to the flea market.
Okay.
And so, but at the same time that he was teasing me, trying to get me to come to the flea market, and because he just, he thinks that I'm not, a flea market guy or something, but whatever, I've done this before. And I listened to this podcast, and they say that one of the areas that they expect for things to kind of change, or that there's a momentum in some groups, and I think it's the group that you're working with, where they have drastically changed flea markets, and it's now something that's newer, and all these, they've made changes. Anything goes in these things. Like they were talking about, they basically had like a dance party, and there was a DJ, and people dressed in all kinds of period clothing that they that they could find. And so anyway, I was very excited about that, and I knew that you were interviewing for this position. And so after having said all of that vomit, I just wanted to hear, like, you took this position.
Yeah.
What's going on here? Because this is a cool opportunity, I think.
So in November, I sold the wrestling company that I owned. And then in January, I sold out of Gamers and Geeks. And I thought I retired. I had, a bunch of rental properties. I was going to remodel one of my rental properties and, sail off into the sunset. Just, I sat at home for about a month and a half. I couldn't do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're way too young to be sitting at home.
I was like, I don't know what I want to do, and this popped up, and that looks like fun. I always like a big project, and I always like to kind of see what the future is going to be or what I could do differently, and I put in my resume, and I don't put in many resumes, and I forgot about it. They called me back like what felt like a month or so later. Wasn't even expecting the call. I was actually out working on my property, and we had a long conversation, and then a couple weeks later, I did an interview with the area manager, and that lasted probably an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and then didn't hear anything for a while, and then they said, hey, what's your schedule like next week? We'd like to fly you to Denver. And I was like, huh? So that was definitely an experience. I got elevation sickness.
Oh, wow.
It was the first time ever.
You know what? Now that you mention it, I have had that experience before, and that is kind of weird, because
it did not feel
we
good.
come from a very wet, humid sea elevation, and then you go somewhere where it's very dry. It's a desert in Denver. And then also at elevation, I can't imagine what you felt like.
That's what my interview was. Like the next day, I was just like, ooh, yeah. So I took some ibuprofen and just did the thing. But apparently I did good, because they called me back. But this place, it just has so much potential. What they have up there is insane. I'm probably going to get the acreage wrong, but it's, I think, 80 acres. They have so many vendors. They have like a farmer's market that's probably a mile long on each side. And like, I got goosebumps thinking about it. Like, it's just so huge. Like when you turn the corner, it's just, and at first I was talking to the their CFO, and he was like, at first they didn't want to put them all together. They wanted to be spread out to the market. He said, but putting them together actually benefited all of them. For
Yeah,
the
it creates
best
kind of a
because-
synergy.
Right. Well, not only synergy, but also how they displayed their products, the type of products they had, the price, everything. And they sell so much like fruits and vegetables and stuff there that the state reached out to them to see if they could accept food stamp, because when they
Oh, wow.
yeah, EBT. So whenever they polled people, like 80% of the people or some crazy number purchased from there,
Yeah.
like their fresh fruits and vegetables, and it was awesome.
Oh, that's cool. So it's owned by a large corporation, or
Yes.
okay? So tell us a little bit about that, because I don't. One, I know that you've never worked for an organization like that.
I've
So
never worked for a corporation. I've
how are you
always-
finding that?
It's fun. It's challenging for me only because, in a corporation setting, there's like some rules and guidelines and budgets and so on and so forth, right? And then when I've always done my thing, I've always just made it work, right? Like,
Right, yeah.
If there's this hurdle, then how do I get around it? So, but in this instance, this is the hurdle.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
so it's been really cool. Have you ever worked for a corporation?
Yeah, before moving down here, I worked for about 10 years in DC, and at the time it was kind of like a big. That was kind of the beginning of the tech boom, right? So, 95, 96, the internet, started to kind of become more prevalent on campus, and then after that, a lot of the tech companies in DC were hiring college graduates and then training them, just basically on the job training. If you had some level of skill and could read and write,
Right.
it was like they were looking for bodies and paying very well. And I'd agree with you. I mean, there are definitely some differences between being an entrepreneur and knowing that, hey, things are just going to ebb and flow, and I'm just going to make my way through it, right? But I'd also say that in order to really, the longer I do this, the more I kind of crave that structure around me, because then there's some safety that comes from that, right?
100%.
And so, having, a budget that's set up and knowing what your, goals are, per month, and, having some, I've got one other guy now, so I don't need any kind of like HR rules or anything like that. But, like those kinds of things are very helpful in running an organization, because it sets very clear guidelines.
Yep.
When you're the entrepreneur, sometimes you're willing to kind of move and accept things as they are, but a corporation is going to say, no, that's not okay.
Right.
That goes against what we believe, and then you have to
Or-
kind of act.
Or it's, I guess you'd say, you can't systemize you. Your
Right.
business is you.
Right.
Right? So if you're not there anymore, bluefish
Yeah.
isn't really bluefish anymore. It might be yellowfish, or,
Yeah.
something to that extent. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to systemize
No, they're trying to create a business.
their
What I have is I own a
vision.
job.
That's right.
What you're trying to do is establish a business.
Correct.
You don't have to mince words. Like I 100% know that is,
Yeah.
the situation.
Well,
you can't do it any other
And
way.
I always had that trouble with, in growing, like, whether I was trying to grow G&G or TCW or any of the past things I've been with, it was always difficult because you're, to try to grow yourself, right?
Right.
Because
You were the limit.
you may say, I don't stock this, or I don't do this, or but if the right opportunity comes along, you can break that rule for the sake of profit, and because hey,
Right.
I can make money with this, or
Yeah.
this will progress my company. Whereas with a corporation, these are the guidelines, and it's like that for a reason, because they've likely already been through that,
Right.
or it doesn't fall with their vision, or so on and so forth. So, do you feel working for a corporation sharpens you for what you do today?
I do, I understand your situation in that you were an entrepreneur and then worked
It's
for
the
a corporation. I worked for a corporation and became an entrepreneur. So my lessons learned are carrying into, and I won't be as arrogant to say that I did everything that way when I first got started, and there are still a lot of things that I don't do that corporations do. But I'm shooting for that. Sometimes it's just a matter of a limitation of time and money
or resources
and
yeah.
resources. Yeah. So,
and with an entrepreneur, you get to choose. This is where I want to put my time in. This is what I want to put my money in, right? Yeah. And I'm noticing with this, you don't necessarily get to choose all the time. I may look at this as this is a time sink, and I don't necessarily want to do it because I'm, I want to be super efficient or something like that. But there are benefits to that. So I'm learning a whole lot. It's a learning curve for me only because I've never done that. Yeah. But I like it. It's teaching me a whole lot.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is there's some benefit to working with people outside of the area. Mm-hmm. There's, I did, and we still do. We work with clients outside of our area, but I've not employed anybody outside of Mobile for quite some time. But I did do a stint for about 2 years at a tech company that was remote. So none of us worked there, and working for a company, and then also having to deal with the remoteness of it. So you're here, and I don't know what your management structure is, but if corporate is in Denver, mm-hmm. then having to kind of still create those relationships and those bonds and things like that, can be a little bit difficult with as much
honestly,
distance.
Because I got to go up there and meet everybody, that hasn't been an issue.
Yeah. Good.
In going up there, I maybe spent an hour or two with the general manager of their facility. I may have spent an hour or two with their operations manager, an hour or two with their food and beverage manager, right? And theirs is huge. It's called Mile High Flea Market. Look it up.
Yeah.
And it is insane. On a Sunday, the Sunday that I was there was favorable weather, because weather affects this business a lot.
Which,
right?
time out, by the way, we're recording this outside, so if you see us doing this or doing one of these, we wanted this.
We're in Alabama.
But we're taking one on the chin for that. So,
so weather does affect the business, right?
Yeah.
And that day was favorable weather. They had 14,681 people on a Sunday.
Oh wow!
It was cool. 3 huge parking lots full, right?
Yeah.
And they had 40 concession stands. They have a Ferris wheel. They had to stop the Ferris wheel because of the wind.
Oh wow!
Right? It was turning on its own.
Oh gosh!
From the wind. I was like, oh man!
It's like something out of that Final Destination movie or something like that. You're on it, and it's I can't get off.
Yeah, they have bumper boats was down because it was cold at that time, right? But it was just huge, and things that I noticed that are different there, elements that I want to bring here is. There, it's it's a mixture between a carnival, a flea market, an outlet mall, and a yard sale.
Right.
And a fresh market. So when you turn the corner, there's different colors and lights and sounds, and this one may be playing music, and then there's the visual of this huge farmer's market. That's what I want here.
Yeah.
It almost made my ADHD happy. And turn the corner. There's just something different every corner. So you can go stay there all day and still not see everything that's there. So I definitely want to replicate that feeling here.
So go back, because I'm not from Mobile. So how long has the flea market been here?
So I wrote a little thing. Let me read it.
There you go. Yeah.
So the Mobile Flea Market was built in 1988. It's almost as old as I am.
Wow.
It's been around for almost 40 years. It's a staple in our community. It's an amazing location, right on Chillinger Road. My plan over the next few years is to basically modernize it. Anything that's 40 years old needs a little extra love, just like my back every day. I personally envision the flea market as a modern-day fair, carnival mixed with a yard sale, a shopping mall, an outlet store, and a collection of artists and event venue all in one.
Yeah.
Seriously, where else can you go or walk around for hours and get fair food like funnel cakes, some roasted corn, fresh squeezed lemonade, cotton candy, buy a brand new waterproof Bluetooth speaker, an iPhone case, have custom artwork created or even airbrushed, and haggle with someone on the price of a used Super Nintendo with crayon marks on it, and enjoy live music or sing karaoke for the low price of just $1 a person to enter.
There you go.
We're working on having some kind of event happening every weekend. So that was their initial plan when they got this, because this was a mom and pop, and
Right.
then they acquired it. But when they acquired it, COVID happened, and it just never really got. That really put like they were bringing in rides and they had all these plans, and then COVID happened and just shut everything down. Yeah. So my goal is to make that happen, is to modernize it. A crazy idea that I have is I want to take a booth and I want to put a little split unit AC in there because it's hot out here. I want to put some soundproofing in. I want to have a podcast, flea market podcast, right? Every one of these vendors have a crazy story. Some of them sell something that they make because maybe they got sick. This lady I talked to yesterday has beat cancer twice.
Wow.
And she swears it's because of this item that she sells, that she did a bunch of research and made. You have people that make organic stuff for dogs. You have, and then you just have like regular, video game, retro gaming or something, but everyone has such a cool story. And I just figured it'd be cool to do something like this, but with them, because a lot of times people don't just buy product, they buy into the person. Why do I like, Bluefish? Because you, right? So like, why would I do business with you? Because of you, so I know your background, I know what you do, so I feel like by putting that on a bigger platform, because I know, or I'm still learning rather, that would be really cool to do. So that's kind of like my future type goal, is to do something like that.
That's cool. I really, I did actually come and visit, about a month ago, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And, it's really cool because there's so many different types of vendors, here, and as you would expect at a flea market, right? So you've got everybody from, like you mentioned, the roasted corn. I think everybody that comes has to have, the roasted corn. And, it was just kind of funny to, you see, chickens for sale on one corner, and like you said, custom artwork or puppies, on another corner. So yeah, there's definitely something to it. It's what kind of changes can we expect? Do you have anything in plan or concrete that you can talk about?
Over the next month or so, we're going to have a free arcade that's here. So when people come in, they can play for free. The only thing that won't be free is if there's redemption machines. So, if you put a bunch of stuffed animals in there and it's set to free play, one person's just going to clear everything out, right? So if it's a redemption machine, it won't be on free play, but there'll be that. And then I plan to use that to have tournaments during our event. So, we're going to have a DDR tournament, and we're going to have a Mortal Kombat tournament. Just something fun to do with that. Definitely going to modernize some things, paint the podcast thing that we talked about. Just some sort of event. People have said they wanted us to bring back the petting zoo, that we used to have petting zoo that we dealt with. We've been upping the concession stuff, so expect some menu changes and stuff like that here soon. I want more carnival type food. I don't want to, we might sell a burger or, something like that.
Yeah, you can get a lot of that stuff at other places. But you're right.
But chicken on a stick or, foot-long corn dog. Or,
like you
funnel
said.
Cakes. We brought funnel cakes back.
Cool.
We're bringing back cotton candy. So, just stuff like that to where you come and it's fun, having like maybe some kind of, not just live music, but some kind of ambient music in the background. I've encouraged the sellers to play music, at a reasonable level, because you don't want to like upset, people or, the other sellers. But I want that turning the corner and, here's this visual. So let me tell you a vision I have.
Okay.
And the CFO of the company is the one who told me about it. And he said, he was talking about the farmer's market. And he said, the reason why he thinks that location does so well is because they have consumables. Right? He said, so you may frequent the flea market once every couple months to go around and look and have a good time and leave. He said, but we get people on the weekly or on the at least every 2 weeks, because this is where they buy their food and stuff, right? And I was like, oh, wow. And then, of course, while they're there, it's like a family fun day and stuff like that. And, he was like, so I challenge you to come up with a consumable that, would work for your area or something. Here it's this, So obviously farmer's market, right?
Yeah, for sure.
If I see somebody on the side of the road, I'm stopping by, talking to them, handing them a card, right?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. But I started thinking, and maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, because I get crazy ideas and some of them work and some of them don't. I want, when someone thinks, man, I want some fresh shrimp or some fresh fish or some crawfish, I need to go to the flea market this weekend.
Yeah.
So I want to see something like, with like display cases where people can come get that's next to the fresh fruit and vegetables and stuff,
it'd be
right?
cool.
On top of that.
I was struck, and if you're out there and, if he doesn't steal this idea and run with it, then by all means, steal this idea and run with it. But I am struck by, because we went to Pensacola to see monster trucks this past weekend.
Oh, yeah. Grave digger.
Yeah. It was a grave digger and, Megalodon and Get Her Done and, El Toro Loco. It was a good time, all right? But anyway, afterwards, I was with a group of people that had never been to Joe Patty's. Have you ever been to Joe Patty's Seafood? Okay, so
wait. Is it right by the dock and they have like a little winery place where you can buy like wine or
yeah,
beer
they
or stuff?
do have like a side, a side shop but it's just like case after case after case of all these fresh fish that they bring in from, all over. And I'm struck by this area because I will not pretend any longer that I'm not from this area. I'm not from this area. I didn't grow up here. I have experiences, that are different than others when they grew up here. That's fine. But, I'm just surprised by the things that we lack. We live and produce some of the world's finest seafood in the whole world. And yet, we have some fish markets, but we don't have anything like that. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's just the sheer number of people and the demographics and, how many people we have as far as the population goes and whether they would fulfill that. But most of the same things are carried at all the places that we have. They're always going to have shrimp. They're always going to have scallops. They're always going to have, maybe some snapper and some white, fish of some sort. And they're going to have crab and crawfish. And that's pretty much it. And if you go to Publix, maybe you can find some tuna, and catfish is the other one, right? And so, but you go over there and you can find Chilean sea bass, you can find, fresh tuna, but you can find like the side of a tuna.
Halibut,
I went in there, halibut, all kinds of stuff. I went in there one time and I remember I saw this lady and she was a small Asian woman. That's why I remember it so distinctly. She was carving like a 500-pound tuna, like it was nothing, just,
oh, wow.
And I just sat there and watched her because it was just such a cool experience. I don't know of anything else like that on the Gulf Coast, and that would just be cool to see somewhere as well.
There's a restaurant in Pascagoula that you should check out called Bozo's.
Okay.
And theirs is not to that size.
Yeah.
But they have people that come in and bring them, so they do sell seafood. It's not to that product, I guess you'd say, variety.
Variety,
right.
Yeah.
But they have fresh seafood that you can buy, and then they also have a restaurant.
Yeah.
And it's
cool.
really good. So, but I completely agree.
Something even on a smaller scale, here would be cool too. But it's funny because we have so many farmers that produce so much in this area, whether it's fruit and vegetables, whether it's actual plants that you need for your yard and stuff like that. I remember when we came, we saw some people that were selling trees and bushes and things like that. And
that's where I've spent most of my money. I'm not gonna lie.
Landscaping the house, are we?
Oh no, man! Yeah. So I am addicted to plants.
Yeah,
so I bought. I've seen pictures of your place.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have similar styles,
it's a little
right?
crazy.
Like wood and black, and I like green, right?
Yeah.
So and plants. So I have tons of like plants and stuff. So love your place whenever I've seen pictures of it.
It's we do have concrete and some very cold features, but we brought in the warmth with the wood, but then also very much plants just make make a place feel alive.
To me,
and that's just amazing to me.
So to me, I 100% agree with that, and water running. I like fountains as well. So to me, my work life or professional life, whatever you want to call it, is always so crazy and hectic, right? I mean, I am, get up and my brain's going, after about 30 minutes and 4 cups of coffee, and I'm just
Yeah.
off for the day, right? And then I just get home and crash, and I said that I wanted to live in a forest. And when I started like doing this house, I just kept that in mind with like the colors that I chose and stuff. I initially wanted to go all black. Have you seen like pictures of those houses that are like black on black on black?
We are. Our house is black on black on black.
I mean, even like the floors and the ceilings and everything,
yeah.
So, but mine is black on black, on black, like the doorknobs and the, AC vents and stuff. But the floor is wood, the roof is wood,
right.
But I added some green. I was gonna do like a little bit of blue for like the kitchen or whatever, and a coworker was like, "Oh, you should really look at this green. It's in the same family." And the more I looked at it, because I like G&G green and stuff like that, I like the color of money. But the more I looked at it, the more I fell in love with it. So mine's basically like black, green, and wood, and I have so many plants. I'm going home at least with a plant. I bought 2 cactuses, and I drive a little car.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, if I got T-boned, I'll send you a picture, you can add it to this. If I got T-boned, I would have been so bad, because one was on the floor and it was touching the roof, and the other one was touching the roof with the seat back. I drive a two-door car, but I make it work, right?
Yeah.
And I was driving, I was like, oh my God, if I get T-boned, I am destroyed. I'm just this side of me.
We digress, but I'll tell this story. And I was watching Instagram last night, and there was a lady. It was an advertisement for a farm that sells succulents. Okay. And she was just like, she was making this beautiful glass bowl, putting the soil in it, sprinkling the sand around it, and then the next frame, she's grabbing cactuses with her hands and placing them in the thing and like moving the dirt around them. She filled this whole bowl up with probably about 20 cactuses and didn't, no gloves, no nothing, and just picked them up like it was nothing. Yeah.
Funny off-topic story, but on the same.
Yeah.
When I was in my 20s, I had a cactus, and I went to water it, and I was walking back in my room, and it was top heavy, so it fell, right?
Yeah.
What do you do when something falls?
You try to grab it, and so it doesn't fall.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And I've done that twice in my life. You think I'd have learned after the first time, but
well, it's hard to change your natural reaction, your instincts.
Yeah, so. Man, I was covered in.
Well, to kind of wrap up, I mean, I feel like there's so much untapped potential here.
Agreed.
And I also just wanted to kind of put out there that the chamber has done a study, and it's a couple years old now, but the numbers have not changed that drastically. And the study was conducted by an outside group, and they found that there were over 27,000 micro businesses in Mobile.
Wow.
27,000.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I don't know how many booths you've got, but it's not 27,000.
Right.
Right, and so that's the mom who makes cakes in her spare time. That's the guy like me who's maybe building some woodworking projects in his garage. It's everybody and then some.
So would that be, I guess, the number of business licenses that have been applied for?
No, it's not, because there's not nearly that many businesses. There's, if I remember correctly, and please don't hold me to this, I think there's somewhere around 2,000 businesses in the chamber. I don't know how many businesses there are in Mobile, but of a factor of 5, say there's 10,000.
Right.
That means there's more than another 100% of businesses that are just side hustles that somebody's doing, that they have some level of capability in doing it, but it's just not a big thing.
And to make that one step further, that's where I see this comes in. So this is a great location, and we already get a ton of people here. Pre-COVID numbers was over 1 million a year.
Oh wow!
So we're working on, and we're close, but we're working on building that back, right?
Wow.
So this is where you start, right? I've known people that have started here and have went on to open their own stores. So I know of multiple businesses that I could name that started here, that are in town, that started at the flea market.
Yeah.
So I think that this is the breeding ground for that kind of stuff. And I also feel that I have crazy ideas. So
no, says the man. I don't know. So we haven't talked about this too much, but you own Gamers and Geeks. You also did a stint as the owner of the wrestling, local wrestling. Are you still involved in
No,
that
I
at all?
sold it in November.
Do you still wrestle?
No, but I got power bombed off the top rope through a table.
Oh gosh,
yeah,
man!
a bunch of things happened.
And
It was
so
fun.
yeah, like there's no shortage of crazy ideas coming from you. So
So you know Shark Tank,
yeah,
obviously, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What about the flea tank? What if I start interviewing people in this podcast or so on and so forth, and we start this on social media for people that present ideas for a booth or so on and so forth, and then let the crowd vote on it, and then give them a featured location for a period of time or whatnot, right? What I've noticed is a lot of people that come up here who run booths are like maybe boomers or millennials or Gen X, right? And there's not a whole bunch of younger people. And if they are, they're usually of a different descent, right? So I was like, how could we because we have a ton of like artists and people that do a lot of really cool things. So I thought maybe we could do something like that because, and this really teaches people how to be an entrepreneur, because you're really competing with yourself. I'll give an example.
Go ahead before but go quick because I don't want to lose this idea. Go ahead.
No, you can go ahead. I'll remember.
Well, no, I was just thinking, we've got Innovation Portal downtown. Like, I mean, this is kind of a business incubator of sorts. So why not start putting some programming together, for the people that work here? I mean, you've owned businesses before, just teaching them some of the small things about merchandising or, margins and, that kind of thing would be incredible. And you have no idea what you might see out of this group.
That's actually kind of on my list is to, I don't want to say educate as in like, blah, blah, but like to show them some different ways of thinking or so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
So, and I've talked to a lot of them about just little random ideas that I did at G&G or something like that worked for us, that they could put into their platform. But I walked around and it was raining, and weather affects the business, right? Sure. And there was people at the end of this row and the end of the other row looking at the parking lot, and it's just pouring down, right? So it got here, it was sunny, couldn't leave, and it's just bottom fell out, right? Yeah. And they're just kind of looking at their car. Well, I walked up to those vendors and I said, "Hey, is this your booth?" And they're like, "Yeah." I guess they thought I was like the police because they were, just just joking. But they said, "Yeah." I said, "Why don't you get a little bucket and put it out front and put umbrellas $10 a piece or 2 for $15 or something?" And they were just like, their eyes got this big. If you're on the end of these two booths where people will go to
you
get
should
to
be
their
selling
cars,
umbrellas.
why don't you sell umbrellas in Mobile, Alabama, the rainiest city in the United States, right? Yeah. And so those are the type of things that I think about that I'm trying to hand them. So
give them some low-hanging fruit, if you will. So. Well, Tommy, I really do appreciate you coming, not coming down because I came to you, but opening up the flea market so that we could do this and making yourself available on your day off. I really appreciate it. So
I appreciate you. I always have a good time talking to you.
Well, likewise. So, and I just like to say, like, if you're a business owner out there, or if you have an idea, come talk to Tommy. Seek him out on social media. He's pretty active on Facebook. But, there's all kinds of businesses. This is just one of the aisles. And so, there's tons of spaces available. And I just think there's something here that if Mobile kind of got behind it, this would be a pretty cool idea. But it's going to require people kind of believing in a vision. So I'm glad we got a chance to talk.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Hey,
appreciate it.
Absolutely.